You want to go through this process each time. I mean, it could be someone on the street getting hurt or kidnapped, or it could
Right.
be at work in a meeting where there's something going on, or you're being asked to do something that is just not. You should speak up about it and question
Yes.
it. Doesn't mean you're trying to change everything, but you're attempting to show that you're not just standing there allowing something to happen that really doesn't feel right to you.
Welcome back to another episode of Love, Growth, and Narratives. I'm Frederick.
And I'm Tiffany.
In this 29th episode, which is part 2 of our Bystander series, we're going to talk about what you can do. But in part 1, we kind of broke down what the bystander effect is. And we talked about a few stories like Kitty Genovese and a few others, and some that was near and dear to Tiffany. And what we didn't want to do was just break down the problem and not also give some solutions. So, Tiffany, you want to talk about that?
I do. It's been a tough last 7 days, so we have a lot going on, which makes this the perfect conversation.
Yes.
It's going to take all of us to do a little something every day to see the world we want to have. We're going to have to be a part of that. There's not going to be anyone who's going to do it for us. Yes, there are people we're paying to do a certain job, but more than anything, we are going to have to make that change. That's the biggest way we're going to see a difference, is by stepping in and rolling our sleeves up and doing some work.
Absolutely. And so with that, we're going to step into the episode.
So as we get this started, we want to clarify that neither we or anyone out there listening are we asking to jump into every situation and try to solve it. We're just saying that don't walk away from every situation either, right? So, obviously there's certain things we can't do when it's too dangerous.
Right.
And so the level of what we can do changes, right? We never have to completely do nothing. We can call someone, we can yell for help, whatever. But we should always do something.
Yes.
And so we are kind of going to talk today about some of the things that we can do in some of the different kinds of situations that arise.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you?
Yeah. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, and we talked about it a little bit when we talked about risk management, has to do with the difference between your risk appetite and your risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Your risk tolerance is kind of your overall, well, your risk appetite, is kind of your overall risk, your appetite for risk, your ability, your willingness to be risky. But then when you talk about your risk tolerance, you got to dive in a little bit and talk about what else is around you in terms of, do you have a family? Do you work at a job that may not be okay with some things that you do or say or things of that nature? I'll give you an example. When I was in the federal government, I was in the Department of Defense. And I mean, personally, I had a fairly high risk appetite. But because of the fact that I was a federal government official, I couldn't say the things that I would like to say on social media. And so I actually didn't even have social media during my time in government.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because of my appetite for risk. It was because of the tolerance. It was because I also didn't want to lose my job. I didn't want to make the department, I didn't want to make it seem like I'm making official statements for the government or the Department of Defense and things of that nature.
Right.
So I kept myself away from a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. And it seems today a lot of people are in that position because of the, what people call cancel culture. So a lot of people feel like I can't say this, or my friends are going to think of me this certain way, or even these strangers or my friends' friends, or, just people out there, or somebody at work might get wind of it. So people are hesitant to speak up, stand up, and that kind of stuff. But if we continue to be in that space, we won't see any real change.
Right. And what we want to talk about is you still don't want to do nothing.
Right.
And so even though there were things that I couldn't say out in public, there were things that I can do behind the scenes to still affect change. And so it wasn't like I said, well, since I can't say anything, I'm just gonna just watch everything go. You can't. You have to decide based on your tolerance for risk, what you're willing to do. You know, it's like when you're young, you're in your late teens, early 20s, you have a high appetite and a high tolerance because it's just like, hey, I'm just a single person. It's just me.
Right.
Something happens, whatever.
Right.
You know, some people it's like, I'm still living with mom and dad. So it's like, who cares if I lose my job? But then as you get older, you get into a career, you have a family, you have things that you can actually lose. And so even though sometimes your appetite may stay relatively high, your tolerance starts to get really low because of the fact that now you have stuff to lose.
Right. And I think your tolerance can change depending on what it is that's going on, right?
Absolutely.
Because I think we tend to say when people want us to do something, let's say the weekend comes, I can't, I'm busy. I have this to do. I have that to do. The kids, there's a million things. I have so many priorities. I can't, I'm not going to be available, so on and so forth. And then these fires happen and everybody and their mother literally are out there donating time. I mean, hundreds, thousands of people. They had to turn volunteers away.
Oh, yeah. They turned us away.
These are some people are like, I don't have time. I can't do it. I got kids. Like, no one's to babysit. So you figure it out sometimes. And it shouldn't always take a huge tragic thing like that for us to step out and, not be a bystander, basically.
Right. Yeah, and you're right that risk tolerance is largely situational. And so when you talk about your risk appetite, it is more of a strategic thing where when you talk about risk tolerance, it's more situation by situation, what you're willing to do. And so, yeah, there is definitely a difference. But, we want to talk about how you still shouldn't do nothing.
We were talking earlier before the mics, came on. We were talking about how people have got to, if more people stood up and did the work and they weren't bystanders, the job, everything would be easier, right? So much wouldn't fall on one person. We might have less things we need to stand up for if we stood together more often. So the more people that do the work periodically in different areas, the less work that's going to be, need to be done.
And that's a critical point because what you're looking at is like distributing the effort instead of, waiting for some strong leader to stand up and take charge and make the world's problems go away, which, is largely unrealistic. And what we don't look at is the toll it takes on the person who does stand up because they oftentimes are standing up alone. Their friends and family kind of shy away. Hey, that's your thing. You let me know, when you're successful, then I'll jump in and help a little bit and take most of the credit. But until then, you're kind of on your own. And what you realize is that if everyone jumped in, you really wouldn't have as much to do.
There wouldn't be as much to probably fear either because there's so many voices saying the same thing. And people have to understand, like, there's people who there's change that they want to happen, but they're not willing to step in, but they're willing to give you advice on how you should go and do this and say this and say that. They don't realize, like, the toll it takes on that one person all the time trying to do it. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't listen when it's one person or two or three.
No, they don't.
They just think that's a person who's complaining, And
especially when your efforts haven't really brought anything fruitful yet. Like when you just get started and you're swimming against the current and you're like, folks, we got to go this way. We got to do it. Not only do people not help, they tend to criticize you.
Yes.
But then when the things that you do start to bear fruit, well, now everybody's on board.
Right.
I always believed in Tiffany. I knew that she was going to be, and I knew that this was important, and I'm on board. And, you get all the stuff.
Right.
We were talking the other day about with MLK, how now people that were, a lot of Black folks that were alive back then claim now that they were all in lockstep with Dr. King.
Right.
When history has shown
and
that,
not just Black folks.
Right. Yes. Everyone. Everyone.
Yeah.
But history has shown that no, a lot of those people said that he was a rabble rouser. He was a troublemaker, and he would go to communities and they didn't want him there. But now that things have gotten better, now that he was successful in a lot of the things that he and the people around him were trying to do, now all of a sudden we're all in lockstep, and we always believed in him. Yeah, that wasn't true.
Yeah, people quoting his, the stuff they want to quote that, helps their agenda.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this time how we wanted to give people ways that they cannot be a bystander. Like, what can you do?
Right.
Right? Not specific to every situation, but something you can kind of use in every situation. Once you have that embedded in your mind, it'll be more natural. And we got this information from Psychology Today.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to have to read this a little bit, excuse me. But
by the way, I will link it in the show notes on the, once this is all out.
Okay. So it's called SQUID, SQUID, right? And each letter stands for something to help improve our decisions around not being a bystander. And it consists of these 5 steps: stop, question, understand, imagine, and decide. And the very first one, stop, is when something feels wrong. Like when something feels wrong, just stop, right? We have that intuition. The most important step is being able to interrupt our autopilot when we see a conflict.
Yeah. So when you're driving down the street and you see something wrong, it's important to stop. If you can safely stop and try to figure out what's going on.
Right. The faster that we can notice what's going on, the faster that we can decide if we're going to be able to help or not.
Right.
Right. But if you just look at it really quickly and keep going and think somebody else is going to do it, And
we've already proven throughout history that when we expect someone else to do it, more often than not, it doesn't happen.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely not. Right. And it mentions some sensations you might have to help you know if there's something wrong. You feel some kind of distress. You have a faster heartbeat and are tightening in your throat. You feel, you literally can feel in your body when there's something wrong, typically.
Right.
Right. The next step is to question, right?
Yes.
It's just to start with our internal dialogues, ask evaluative questions about what we specifically notice, and ask ourselves about the assumptions we are making. We can ask, why do I feel like something is wrong, or what's really going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of question what's, give yourself a chance to go over the situation, the who, what, when, where, whatever you need to use.
Let it sink in. And probably, I would imagine that the more you do something like this, the quicker those things will come to you.
Right. Exactly. It says, if we're trying to help others, we try to choose questions that can help us understand things from their point of view, such as what might be going through their minds right now.
Yes.
Okay. The next one is to seek understanding.
Yes.
By taking even a few moments to look beyond our initial impressions at the bigger picture, we can make wiser choices about what we do next. Try to look for more than one perspective about what is going on and why. What other factors should you consider? What's triggering the reactions of the other people involved?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's vital, right? So you've got so far stop, question, and understand.
Right.
The next one is imagine. Imagine your choices. As we try to improve on our understanding, we can start considering our options. One of the reasons we act without thinking is that we aren't imagining what could happen next. We use deductive approaches, anticipating how other people are likely to respond to different things we could say or do, or we think more inductively, starting with our goals for what we want to see happen and what we could try to do to achieve them. So I'm like, imagine what that support would look like is how I'm taking this for that person. Imagine what you could do and how it could help in the situation.
Yeah. What do you feel like that person needs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, decide what to do next. Even if we decide to follow our instinctive choice and remain passive, at least we still practice questioning ourselves wisely before that decision. We're not just on autopilot and ignoring things, not my problem, not my problem, right? You've gone through this whole process where you're deciding at the end, is this something I'm going to be able to help? Obviously, it has to move fast depending on what the situation is. Sometimes we do things without even thinking about it.
Right.
Right. But we just jump in. But you want to go through this process each time. I mean, it could be someone on the street getting hurt or kidnapped, or it could be at work in a meeting where there's something going on, or, you're being asked to do something that is just not, you should speak up about it and question it. Doesn't mean you're trying to change everything, but you're attempting to show that you're not just standing there allowing something to happen that really doesn't feel right to you, which goes back to the beginning, right? The very first thing, which is to stop.
Yes.
Right? So if you're ignoring that reason to stop, that feeling that you're getting about what's coming at you, and you don't do anything about it, you're a bystander.
Yes.
And often people want to be seen as the good guy or the bad guy or girl in a situation, right? We tend to think that if we're not the perpetrator, then we're good.
Yes.
But if you're not standing up and helping out, when you see something and you're not evaluating, you're not thinking at all, I'm sorry, you're probably not on the side of quite good.
Right.
Right. So you're not the villain, but you also are not the hero.
Right. And it's important to note that there are going to be circumstances where you really can't get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Where there isn't really an effective intervention that you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And in those, in those minority of situations, then at least you sat and thought about it.
Right.
But getting into the habit of making those calculations of the SQUID method and going through that process will let you know, okay, here's what I can, here's what I can't do. And, for those who are used to letting things happen, it's going to be tough at first, and it's going to be tough for a while.
Yeah.
But you'll get better at it. You'll get quicker of going through that SQUID method, and you'll start to realize that you can actually affect a lot of things without taking a large amount of risk.
Right. Absolutely. And the more people who are doing that, the better.
Yes.
The better for everyone, right? Because now we've exercised that muscle and we feel comfortable doing so. We know that we can count on people more, right? Because it's a really lonely feeling when you feel like there's like all these people around you and no one's stepping in, whatever the situation may be. Just a comment you made where everyone's feeling like you, or, it could be something more serious like violence or whatever. So just the more we all take a stance that whatever change we want to see in our society, we have to be a part of it.
Yes.
Not being a part of it is holding back change from happening.
Yeah.
It's making it more difficult for other people.
Yeah.
And it can't feel good to just sit there and, be so complacent about things.
Yeah. And what it does is we get to a point where we stop expecting someone else to jump in. We talked about the situation with the police. We looked at, with the fires, the situation with the fire department, where you have very capable, hardworking firefighters, but they were just up against a task that was just way too much.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to ask ourselves, what can we do? Now, this is not a situation of constantly saying, well, you should have done this and you should have done that.
Right.
But what it is looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, these things happened. We did nothing. What can we do in the future to make sure that when the next time it occurs, because it will, the next time it occurs, we're better prepared to actually help.
Right. Right. And maybe that situation will not even be there because we took the time to solve it.
Yes.
Because again, we're not just talking about someone's being raped, or, you know, there's a fire. I mean, there are so many opportunities
Yes.
to speak up about things.
Yeah.
So many. And often people don't. It's always when they do, it's to, you know, deaf ears, or it's to, like you're saying it to someone in the home. You're not like going out there and letting it be known, putting a stop to certain conversations, certain comments. Don't allow that stuff around you.
Yeah.
You know, there's little, I know it's uncomfortable at first to tell someone that you feel is your friend, like, hey, I don't like what you just said. Like, that's not okay what you said, or to give them a look, but you got to do it. It's okay to.
But sometimes it's also about figuring out how you can show just a little bit more kindness, a little bit more friendliness and consideration of other people. You know, I remember back when I used to run a lot, you know, and I would run every morning. And this is back when I lived in West Hollywood, and I would run up and down those streets, and I would see this. There was this older lady. She was opening up a store down the street from us. And as I was running past, I said, "Good morning." And it scared her. She was startled. And, you know, I was like, oh, boy, did I do something wrong?
Right.
But then I saw her again about a week later. And I said, "Good morning." And she was, "Oh, good morning. Thank you so much for saying something." And just, you know, just something that small, you know, like our son. He's so, you know, every time he gets around people, he's, "Have a nice day. How are you doing today? Is everything okay?" And just those little things, you know, where people say, okay, someone is thinking about me, and maybe this motivates me to show the same courtesy to someone else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just it could be something small or big, but just be a part of the world and the society you live in.
Yes.
And make, you know, find a way that you're going to make changes. You're going to make changes for the better, and not be just be walking around kind of robotic in the world.
Right.
And watching everything happen to other people and not like stepping in. We're all in this together. We can't do anything by ourselves.
Right. And you'll find that the more you start to do these things, you have a positive influence on people around you.
Right.
Where the people around you will say, okay, well, I see this person stepping up. What am I willing to do? And if everyone starts making that calculation, starts going through that SQUID process, then life will be so much easier, and we won't be yelling and screaming at the politicians or the police department or the fire department and everybody else, expecting everyone else to do what we can, you know, the things that we can help ourselves.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think that we need to beat this horse any further to death, but I want people to understand that it is really up to you. Stop looking to the government. And if you don't like the new government that just came in, then that's all the more reason for you to get involved and see what you can do. And if you do like this government, understand 4 years from now, they just seem to flip between left and right. So if you do like this government, understand in 4 years, you'll probably in the situation of the people who are on the left saying, you know, oh man, the government's going crazy. But either way, the more you do, the less effect a lot of these external government officials have on your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that wraps it all up. What do you think?
I think so. Let's go out there and be an ally to people and get involved and, you know, just analyze the situation, use that SQUID method, and do some work out there and make the world a better place. Yeah.
And like I said, I'll put links in the show notes to the Psychology Today article that talks about the SQUID method, and hopefully people will start to not only put that into their own lives, but talk to people around them about it and everything else, and we get things better. But for now, that was part 2 of what now is episode 29 of Love, Growth, and Narratives. I'm Frederick.
And I'm Tiffany.
Thank you so much for your time, and be better to everybody.
Yes. See you next week.
Take care.